Hi, I'm Linda Abraham, President and Founder of Accepted. I'm moderating today's webinar, which is How to Create Successful Secondary Applications, and that webinar will be presented by Accepted Consultant Alicia McNeese-Namankar. A few items worth noting before we start. One, we're going to have a contest towards the end of the webinar based solely on content presented during the webinar, so stay tuned. And we're going to let you know also, if you want to watch the recording, we'll record this and we'll let you know when the recording is live. If you have not yet downloaded your webinar worksheet, you can do so from the handout section on your control panel. And I personally recommend that you print it out and you use it for taking notes. You'll be able to just follow along that much more effectively. Alicia is going to ask questions in the course of the webinar, and the best way to, in some cases, we're going to ask you to post your answers in the question window. In other cases, we're going to ask you to raise your hand. You can do so by clicking on the hand icon, two icons underneath the horizontal orange arrow. And I'm going to ask you to test this ability. Please raise your hand if you are attending this webinar because you want to become a physician, your dream career. Okay. Please raise your hand if you want to become a physician and that's your dream career. Okay, yeah, most of you. All right, good. Okay, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you. And then the final item, which I think is probably everybody's favorite, is we're going to announce a special discount today for webinar registrants. But rather than have you waiting anxiously to find out what it is until the end of the webinar, I'm going to reduce your anxiety levels and announce it right now. $100 off any order over $1,250. The coupon code is over $1,500. The coupon code is Save Big, and that ends October 8th, 2018. And the URL is on the page. Now, we'd like to learn a little bit about you, but before I do that, I want to let you know that I will announce, we already did that. Okay, now to learn a little bit about you. Where are you located? In the question window, please. Virginia. Okay, welcome. Florida, California, a neighbor. Very good. Dallas, Texas. Anybody in Boston, which is then you'll be Alicia's neighbor. Texas, somebody else from Texas. Washington, D.C. At least the same coast. Vancouver, California. A lot of Californians here today. Florida, Virginia, D.C. That's, I guess, more eastern. Okay. All right. And Jackson, Mississippi, another California. Okay. Well, welcome everybody from near and far. We'd also like to learn a little bit about you. So I'm going to launch a poll here. Here's the first poll. Where are you at in the application process? You haven't, I'm sure you've submitted primaries by now. Well, actually, maybe you haven't submitted any primaries. Indicate the one that most applies to you. You have submitted primaries, but you haven't received secondaries, and you've started to receive your secondary applications. Which is the ones that are most relevant for you? Ooh, we're a great audience. 80% having voted already. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll and share the results. 42% of you haven't submitted your primary, so I'm going to guess that you're planning ahead for next year. 0% have submitted the primary but haven't received secondaries, and 58% have started receiving secondaries, which kind of makes sense to me. Certainly the last part of it does. And then, okay, the next question is, are you a first-time applicant or a reapplicant? Again, please indicate the option that's most applicable to you. Are you a first-time applicant or a reapplicant? Oh, wow, you guys are a great audience. Okay, 88% having voted, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa, we got 94% on this one. Here we go. 67% are first-time applicants and 33% are reapplicants. Okay, good to know. All right, and again, that also makes sense to me. Finally, I'm thrilled to introduce Alicia McNeese-Namankar, who will present how to create successful secondary applications. Alicia started advising Accepted's clients in 2012. She immediately was earning rave reviews from clients. Prior to joining Accepted, she both evaluated applications and advised med school applicants as director of the UC Davis postbac program. She brings enormous insight and experience with the medical school application process to our webinar today. I'm going to be quiet now and let Alicia present how to create successful secondary applications.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. So the first question I have for you guys is actually going to be, how many, if you can give us a show of hands, how many people have completed secondary application essays before? If you can give us a show of hands.
Okay, so we're at about 40%, 46% now. Okay. About half, almost half.
Okay. So for those of you who have submitted secondaries before, what did you learn about the experience? What could you have done better?
If you could respond to that in the question window. Again, we're going to use the question window for your questions as well as your answers. It was very tough. One response. I had it to be pretty introspective. It's hard to keep track of them as well as submitting them on time. Time management, says Samantha. And a lot of drafts.
Yeah, excellent. So that's helpful. So for those of you who are new to the process, so roughly half of you, secondary application invitations are sent out after medical schools have received your AMCAS primary application. The secondary applications typically contain anywhere from one really long essay to maybe on average 5 short essays. They allow the medical schools to learn more about you as an applicant and a person, and to find out how much you know about them and their school. They often give you a chance to update the school on your current activities or recent publications. And basically, they want to know what you're doing while you're applying to medical school, and actions speak louder than words. Letters of recommendation are due with the secondary application. So good news for those of you brand new to the process. The letters of recommendation are due with the secondary application. But it's a good idea to request them so that you have them by the time you submit your primary, just so that they're ready to go. So there's 3 different types of secondary application. There are automatic secondaries, manual secondaries, and there's a new kind of secondary called a CASPA. So automatic secondaries, as the name suggests, you're automatically sent a secondary if you meet the certain GPA, MCAT screening criteria that the school sets, right? So they look for a set limit of, you know, if your GPA is above a 3.0 or above a 500 for the MCAT, right, then you're going to get a secondary from that school. The school sets their parameters, and they have a screening system that, right, will screen students out or in for secondary. It is a money-making industry, so schools, right, like Tufts or George Washington, right, they send automatic secondaries, and you know that they're automatic because you get them almost immediately after submitting the primary. There is an exception, right? Applicants who apply as disadvantaged, you may be screened by a person before being given a secondary or being rejected. So most medical schools have a policy that they do not automatically reject disadvantaged applicants. The second type of secondary are manual. So these are screened by a person before the invitation is sent out, and this means the school is demonstrating a genuine interest in you as an applicant. It's a compliment to receive this kind of secondary, and there are fewer invitations typically sent out for this type of process because it's so labor intensive. There's a lot of people involved. The third type of secondary, the newest version, is the CASPER. It's offered at actually multiple medical schools this year. They started, 2 medical schools first started using it. That was NYU Medical College, Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. But now there are many more schools using it. And it's not required by a lot of schools, but it is optional. They give you an option of submitting it to them if they don't require it. It's a timed essay responses. The Casper takes about 90 minutes to complete, and you have to register for a set test date. So basically, it's a computer-based situational judgment test designed to evaluate your core personal characteristics, those considered essential for students to be successful in medical school and ultimately as practicing physicians. So some of these include checking on your professionalism, ethical grounding, empathy, compassion, and cultural sensitivity. The Casper can be taken anywhere that you have access to a computer with audio capabilities and a reliable internet connection. So it's going to flash text, images, photos, videos, and they want your honest reaction to them, and they give you situational questions you have to respond to. So it's a series of hypothetical everyday situations presented through a variety of formats, right? As I said, text, animation, or live action video. So it's really not a test that you can study for. It's not something that you can spend time studying for. It's really a matter of, scheduling the time to take it and being honest in your responses and being as flexible and creative in coming up with solutions to complex issues. So the timeline for secondary applications. So automatic secondaries can arrive as early as 2 weeks after your MCAS application is verified, and some schools send it even before your MCAS application is verified. Your hand-selected secondary invitations, the manual type of secondary, can take weeks longer for you to receive them, and typically 4 to 6 weeks after the application is verified, for those on average. It is best to submit secondary applications 2 weeks after receiving them. So if you take only one thing away from this webinar, I hope it would be this, that you should submit all secondaries within 2 weeks of receiving them, because it increases your chances of getting an interview the faster you return it. So I had a student who was rejected last cycle after submitting secondaries, 2-3 months after receiving them. So the longer you wait, right, the longer you wait, the greater your chances of getting an interview decrease. So making that school a priority, getting that secondary submitted with the 2-week turnaround, is really demonstrating to them how important their school is to you. So any questions before we move on?
Let's see. Any questions in the question window, please? One of when you were asking earlier about the challenges in the secondary applications, one of the participants said trying not to repeat what I have written in the primary app was a challenge that she faced in writing secondaries previously. Is that something you're going to address later on, or?
Yeah, actually, we're definitely going to go into strategies for how not to repeat material. But that's something, working with someone like me or my colleagues is a fantastic idea, because we can really ask you, I focus on asking clients a lot of questions, understanding their background, where they're coming from. And then that way, right, when we outline secondaries or essays together, right, I'm able to help you either find more strategic examples or activities to use so that you're not being repetitious, or, right, covering it from an entirely different angle. So often, if there's no better activity than to cover something you've already written about, then it can be very helpful to reframe it, to cover a part of it that you didn't have time or didn't have space for, or really to approach it in a surprising or unique way that answers the essay prompt, of course.
Okay. And here we have another question. How long after sending secondaries should I send the colleges a letter of intent?
Yeah, letters of intent. So usually you don't send letters of intent until you're placed, on a waiting list or, it comes down to the wire. So it would be much too early, right? If you're working on your secondaries now, this really isn't the time to be sending letters of intent because they're about to get a lot of writing from you already, right?
No,
They're about to
I
already
think
get.
she's already sent it. She's already sent her secondary. Like, is this the kind of thing like with letters of intent where you wait X months or weeks and then you send a letter of intent? Or is it a kind of more kind of thing like, well, if in February you haven't heard, or if in January you haven't heard, then you should send the letter of intent.
I would send the letter of intent after you've interviewed. Like if it's been a significant period of time and you haven't heard back after your interview, or if you've been placed on the wait list, that's when I would recommend sending a letter of interest. But the letter of interest should secretly always double as an update letter, right?
Sure.
Because for each step of the process, you should be working on new achievements, new activities, so that, from when you submit the primary to your secondaries, you've already got something new to write about. And then from secondaries to the interview, you'll have even more new stuff happen. And you could even do things like, run a half marathon, go on a mission trip, a medical mission trip.
Right.
Right. There's all kinds of amazing things you can do to continually demonstrate, right? Actions speak louder than words. Demonstrate how devoted you are to this goal.
Okay. Now, Lou asks, it's 2 months since I received a secondary application. Is it still okay for me to submit it for them?
Is what okay to submit?
In other words, he or she, I'm not sure, I apologize, received a secondary application 2 months ago.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, you're welcome to submit the secondary if it's been 2 months, but just keep in mind you've kind of let the school know that they're not your priority.
Right.
So the chance of getting an interview is decreased. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't happen at all, right? I mean, there's still the chance, but
Right.
it definitely they know that they're not your priority, right?
Right. The only way there's zero chance of getting an interview is if you do not submit a secondary.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Okay. Let's move on. And if to our participants here, if you have questions, please do post them in the question window, and then we can come back to them the next time that we're going to have a Q&A break. Okay? Let's go ahead.
So next we're going to talk about shortcuts to maximize your strategy. So starting early whenever possible. I absolutely love it when clients want to. I have clients right now who are working on putting together their primary applications for next cycle. And it is so much fun because we get to take our time and put together, right, gorgeous, strategic, beautiful applications that they're going to be excited to submit. And then by January, we'll start outlining and working on their secondary essays. So before they even submit the primary, right, they're going to have everything in the primary ready to go, and they're going to have most of their secondary essays also ready for submission. So they're going to be cool as cucumbers once the application process rolls around, because they've already got most of it ready and complete. And they know that they're going to be submitting their best work. So I can't emphasize enough, although those of you who are in it and you're kind of treading water right now probably, if you can, as soon as you get the essay prompt, don't throw it aside and not read it. Read all of the essay prompts as soon as you get them. And I love this phrase, but put it on the back burner. So what that means is to put it on the back burner. Put it sort of in the back of your mind that, hey, I have these, 2, 3, maybe 12, if you're applying to University of Miami, right? I have these 12 essays to reply to. And then you can just sort of like read through the questions, put it on the back burner, and I'm repeating it so you remember that phrase, and you'll be thinking about it so that by the time you sit down to outline, to work on your essays, you're already going to have ideas. You're already going to be like, right, doing the easiest essays first, do the hard ones last, be strategic. And I always think it's best to kind of look through all the essays and say like, okay, I'm going to cover soccer in this one. Then I'm going to cover retaking the MCAT here. Then I'm going to cover, my horseback championship experiences here, or whatever it is. But I think sitting down, looking at all the essays strategically, choosing what you're going to cover in each one, and then methodically approaching them and doing outlines, right? So you would never build a house without a blueprint. So why would anybody write an essay without an outline, right? That just sounds painful, right? So help yourself out by putting the essays in your back burner, thinking about what you're going to write. The more reflection you engage in, the more you think about your strategy, the better it's going to be, right? Your brain is the most powerful tool that you have. So maximize your use of it by working according to its rules, right? So give yourself a chance to read through the essays, think about strategy, outline, and then approach it methodically draft after draft until they're ready for submission. And the cool thing is, for those of you who want to start early, we have posts available on the accepted.com website with secondary essays, questions, and tips. And these are available as a free download by registering on our site. And we provide tips on how to complete secondaries for different schools. And I think they're incredibly helpful. So please, feel free to make use of those. You can also find the secondary questions on Student Doctor Network, Prospective Doctor. There are different sites that provide them. And schools do not change them very much from year to year. Very few schools change one or more questions. They usually stay the
I just
same.
posted them.
Oh, yay, great.
I just posted the link to ours.
So after completing application materials for your primary, begin working on secondary essays for your top choice schools, right, if you're starting early. So for those of you who talked about keeping track, time management, my advice is going to be to create an Excel spreadsheet to track the schools and deadlines. So this can be your big picture overview in which you list all the schools that you're applying to, list the dates that you received the secondary invitation, the dates the secondaries were submitted, dates of interviews, right? This will help you keep track of your progress for all the schools and to stay focused and motivated, right? I tell students to take it one essay at a time or one school at a time. And this is going to help you to not get so overwhelmed. It'll help you better manage your time. I think you'll end up doing better writing if you feel more focused. My other recommendation is to work with a professional editor, an admissions consultant like me and my colleagues, right? Getting advice and editing assistance on essays from experts will help you improve the quality of your writing and chances of gaining an interview. So, right, my clients get to rest assured that they are doing their best work, that, right, they're having me review everything before they submit it, so they feel really good about it. And it's exciting to see, for me, that from when I first begin working with them, to see how much their writing improves through my coaching. That always absolutely warms my heart to see. So working with an expert can give you that confidence, it can give you the edge, and then you're always going to know, right, like if you need help with outlines, if you're not sure what to cover, is this strategic enough, is this material strong enough, right? I can absolutely make sure that you're submitting the strongest material that will best represent you. And so really I can help you identify what information to include in your essays, because that can be hard to know what to focus on, what to use, what not to use. Next, we're going to talk about the anatomy of a secondary application, the basic types of questions. So the first kind of question can be a long autobiographical essay or several short questions about you. I think Baylor is one of the best examples. indicate any special experiences, unusual factors, or other information you feel would be helpful in evaluating you, including but not limited to education, employment, extracurricular activities, prevailing over adversity. You may expand upon but not repeat AMCAS application information. And that one's a 2,000 character limit. Another example would be, describing any challenges you've overcome, your most rewarding experience, any special interest in a particular area in medicine, or where you see yourself in 10 years. And often, in this type of secondary question, right, they request new information, including any updates, or they have you cover old information from a new angle. So the cool thing about this type of essay, and you're like, there's nothing cool about these essays, right? You're like, we're pulling our hair out. These aren't cool at all. But the thing that I think is cool is that you can cover events from childhood and on. So often, right, in the AMCAS application, you don't want to focus your attention on high school, right? That would be weird and it wouldn't be a good thing to do. But in these autobiographical essays, often, right, you can go to time periods or to periods of time in your life that you couldn't really spend much time on before. But maybe they provide some very rich sources of information about your motivations for going into medicine. So basically, they want to get to know you as a person in this type of essay. That's their motivation. They want to know what interests you, what motivates you, what do you need to be a successful student, right? So for those of you listening, what kind of information would you include about yourself for this type of question?
Can you answer that in the question window, folks? What type of information would you include? Anybody want to? What would you include? Anybody want to hazard a guess there? My background, how I overcame challenges in my life, adversity, challenges, why I want to be a doctor, meaningful events that influenced my decision. Alicia, what do you think of those options?
Yeah, these are fantastic. So yeah, you definitely want to cover your background, and you want to cover anything that is unique about your background. So if you speak multiple languages, if you visited multiple countries, if you have any unique experiences, maybe traveling with an international choir and performing. It could be a lot of different things that are interesting or make you stand out as an applicant. Adversity, yeah, so that's also a good topic to cover. But you want to make sure you don't cover adversity that may not be considered adversity, right? So, the time you chipped a nail, right? Probably not that one. So for questions like about adversity, I think it shows, when they ask that question, in my opinion, I think they're examining the maturity of an applicant. And often I think many doctors say that you don't really become an adult until you lose, like a parent. And so any kind of illness, death in the family, right, like that's adversity, right? So you want to make sure if you cover adversity that you're covering, if you had to move to a new country, learn a new language to survive, if you struggled, growing up in low-income neighborhoods where there was drugs, gangs, violence, but you still made it to school and you still excelled in school, right? So you want to cover real forms of adversity.
Can I just add something here?
Yeah, please.
It's not just the adversity; it's overcoming the adversity that you want to bring out. You don't want to come across as damaged goods. You want to come across as somebody who's stronger because you overcame what you overcame. It's fair enough, Alicia?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay.
Or it comes across as kind of whiny or complaining.
Right.
I know
Um,
complaining isn't a word, but I love it.
yeah, yeah. Well, whining certainly is. Um, so that would be, I mean, again, the focus should be on the overcoming of the adversity, not just the adversity itself, particularly when it comes to, I think, personal loss. Okay,
Yeah.
so that would that would just be one thing I wanted to add, and I'll be quiet again. Okay.
Yeah. No, no, I totally agree. So if I think Linda's right, if you cover adversity, make sure that right you describe how you overcame it and what strategies, coping mechanisms, techniques, the ways that you were able to recover your equilibrium or to improve, whatever it may be. Um, the why medicine, yeah, definitely. Any question they ask you, either in a secondary or at your interview, they're always secretly asking why medicine, right? Like if they say, a lot of students kind of get tricked when they say like, hey, tell me about yourself. But you can't forget, right? You're at a medical school when they're asking you this question. Context is everything. So even if they say, describe yourself or what are your most important traits, they're always secretly asking why medicine. So I love that somebody pointed that out because that's true. And then, yeah, meaningful experiences, meaningful events and experiences. Yeah, because what you describe or what you identify as meaningful to you is actually helping them to psychologically profile you, right? They're able to see, right, if you were separated from your brothers and sisters for 9 years and you finally got to see them again, right? That's most definitely a meaningful event, and that's incredible. I can imagine what that person must have experienced. Um, so if you choose meaningful events, just make sure you're choosing things that other people would also identify with. Okay, so moving on. So I think some of the best responses I've seen to these autobiographical essays would be, um, students who have overcome incredible challenges and been successful. Um, so really highlighting their unique strengths, qualities, but also answering why medicine. You can actually answer all of these questions, very strategically by covering all these points, right? All these things can intertwine, right? You can tell your story in such a compelling and interesting way that they enjoy reading it, number one. Two, they learn about you as an applicant. And three, they get excited to call you for an interview and they feel like hey, I've got to interview this person. They sound amazing, right? I want to teach this person medicine. So for the next strategy, I recommend using a timeline that you've created of your life. That includes all significant events and or an updated copy of your resume or CV. The reason I recommend students create a timeline of their life is because it gives you a chance to create a storyboard. You can get creative, right? You can clip out pictures from magazines. You can draw things. However you prefer to work. But I think it's very helpful to sit and spend time with family, friends, looking through old yearbooks or journals, and really, without even looking at your secondaries, just creating a timeline. And then check off the items you've already covered in your primary application, right? And then create a list from the remaining items that you've not covered, which are related to clinical research work or leadership or community service, right? And then use what you haven't covered yet, right? You can ask yourself, are there any items that relate to how you've overcome adversity? Or is there something unique you've identified that you didn't see before? So strategically selecting the activities or events that will reveal more about you as a person, right? This will help you create an outline, right, using the short list. So I really try to encourage my clients, my students, to be as creative as possible, to start journaling, to start thinking about, hey, are there deeper reasons why I'm doing this? Are there reasons that I haven't even considered yet? Right? So asking really thoughtful questions and exploring them, taking the time to explore them, because you're going to end up with such better essays and such richer and deeper and more interesting essays. And you also get to learn more about yourself too, right? Engage in self-reflection. So the second kind of secondary question you're going to see are questions about them. So the sample question I have is from Cornell, and it's 3 words: why our school, right? So they want to know how much you know about their school and what is important to them. So do your research on these. I can't emphasize that enough, right? So for those of you listening, what are some ways that you can find out more about the school?
In the question window, please. What are some ways you can learn about the school? Some of you have posted questions and you're wondering if we're going to address them. We're going to address them a little bit later. So yes, I see your questions. And in terms of responding to Alicia's last question, school website, SDN, Google, attending information sessions or open houses, looking at their website, reading their philosophy and mission statement, good. School websites, social sites, word of mouth, webinars like this one, conferences, and new articles the school has posted.
One thing I think wasn't mentioned was joining their social network
Somebody
pages.
mentioned
So
social.
Oh, they did?
Somebody
Yay,
did,
that's
yes.
awesome. Yeah, so don't miss out on the mission statement, right? Don't miss the obvious.
Social sites. That was Asha.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah, Asha, awesome. Website, pre-med fairs, campus events, visiting the school. If you have time, visiting the school, if it's close enough, is one of the best possible things you can do. And I encourage my clients all the time, as soon as possible. Visit as many medical schools as you can, closest to you that you're applying to. It shows such dedication to be able to say in your secondary that you've actually visited the school. Networking, yeah, somebody said that. That's awesome. So, reading their student handbooks, looking at watching their YouTube videos if they have any. But another thing also is to look at, search the school's name in the news. Have they won awards recently? Have they, met some kind of performance, evaluation with flying colors? Or is their student-run clinic getting recognition for the work that they're doing? So get creative, right? You want to be that student who sets yourself apart by demonstrating how well you've done your homework. And something that nobody said yet, and I think is actually very helpful, is calling the school with questions. And if you're feeling like very shy, you don't have to give your real name, or you can have somebody else call for you. But sometimes when the website's really difficult to read or it's outdated, which many of them are, right? Calling and asking questions. Obviously, you don't want to do that in place of reading the website. Check the website first. You only want to call and ask questions about stuff that's not available on the website. But that can easily set you apart, or contacting friends, who go there, or if you know somebody who knows somebody. But definitely visiting the school, calling the school after you've researched the website. Those are easy ways to set yourself apart. The next strategy I recommend is that to demonstrate how well you know their school and how much research you've done, establish a clear understanding of what they offer that will most benefit you, right, by helping you reach your career goals. So often in these essays, right, space is limited. So keep this essay focused and select only the most relevant and important reasons why you want to attend their medical school. So if you like the shape of their anatomy lab or something, right, or their cadaver lab, right, obviously there should be more important reasons than the look of the campus or the buildings. But so for those of you listening, what are some things you could include?
What are some of the things you could include as reasons for wanting to attend a particular school? Student-run clubs, programs, clubs, organizations, research departments they may have, their community involvement and clinical exposure, areas of expertise, emphasis on public health, local clinics, student-run clinics, curriculum, global health program, proximity to family, affordability. Sorry about that. Can you say that it's close to your hometown? Um, NYIT is big on technology, so mentioning your desire to be technologically involved. I don't know if you know, but we interviewed the head of NYIT not long ago, and while yes, they are focused on technology, they're also very much focused on the um, osteopathic method. So just don't ignore the more human factor with NYIT. And if I'll post you a link to that one.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I attended a symposium at one of the schools I'm applying to and got to hear presentations from faculty at that school. So I wrote about the dynamic of the faculty with the audience in my secondary. Okay.
Yeah, these are all wonderful things. Yeah.
Mm.
So, right. So demonstrating your understanding of their curriculum, what's unique about it, what's changed or what's new. Looking at, right, somebody said the faculty, what's interesting or unique about what the faculty bring to their university or their medical college. Looking at special programs, any special interests you have in research or research interests you could highlight that they offer, any, special training, any dual or unique degree combinations that you might be interested in later. Most medical schools allow students to earn a master in public health during their medical education. That's very common. But looking at what they offer that's different from all other schools, and making sure that you emphasize, right, what you hope to accomplish through gaining that training or that expertise or that experience. Yeah, so these are all your responses were wonderful. So for next thing we're going to talk about is the third type of secondary essay that you can get. So the secondary essays that are actually essay questions about you and them. So if you can imagine a Venn diagram, right? There's you in one circle, them in the other. And for this type of essay, you want to focus in that area where the circles overlap. So the example question I have, which so many schools use, is how will you enhance the diversity on our campus? So these questions require that you balance enough details about you and about how much you know about their campus and how you would fit in. So for this one, the strategy I recommend is to make a long list of your unique qualities, talents, and experiences. The longer, the better. Remember, it takes 10 ideas to get to one really, really good idea. Cross out those items that you have already included in your personal statement and identify your top 3 on the list as they relate to the school's mission and goals. And explain how those 3 identifiers will allow you to connect with the community and how they represent you as an individual. So any questions before we continue on?
There are actually quite a few questions, and just let me see. I think it makes sense. There are a lot of questions, but I think we should really move on and then go back to the questions, okay?
We'll circle back.
Yeah.
So the next step, if all goes well, you may be invited to interview anytime between August and April, depending on when you submitted your AMCAS application and the schools you're applying to. And just keep in mind, last week, my first student this cycle already got an acceptance.
Woo!
And he started, yeah, I'm so excited for him. He started last year working with me. So last fall, we put together his primary. And in January, from January to May, we worked on his secondaries. And he was able to submit his secondaries sometimes in 1 week after receiving them, always within 2. He really followed the 2-week rule, and he's already got an acceptance.
Whoa.
So, yeah, I'm very excited for him.
October 4th, he has an acceptance? That's fantastic.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Well, it's starting early. Starting early makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So rolling admissions begins around October, right, and ends as late as August. Most medical schools begin classes between July and September. So it's not over till it's over. I had a student call me sobbing. I'm sure you remember this, Linda.
Yeah.
Sobbing, and I think it was like, I want to say it was maybe June or July, I can't remember. And she had gotten called, and I thought for sure she was calling to tell me she got rejected.
Yeah.
But she was calling to tell me that she got accepted like a week before classes were beginning.
Oh, gosh.
And she was sobbing out of pure joy. And it was one of the best phone calls I think I've gotten.
Sure, sure.
So it can happen, right? Schools
Yeah.
can sometimes let students know weeks and even days before school starts that you've been pulled off the wait list. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention.
Okay, so it's my turn now. I'm going to start talking again. I want to thank Alicia for the excellent presentation and all the great advice. I want to thank you applicants for your participation. We're going to take questions in just a few minutes, as I said. Before we do that, I wanted to speak with you for a couple of minutes. Let's face it, it's hard to get accepted to medical school. That's just the bottom line, raw facts, as the data on your screen now shows. Alicia has given you the what and why of responding well to secondary applications, but the how of applying that excellent advice to your situation, your qualifications, your goals, and your experience, that how begs for individual advising from experienced professionals like Alicia, who can guide you through the lengthy, grueling process that is medical school admissions. And that individual advising, as you'll see in a moment, is a key factor not only in applying successfully, but also in applying confidently. And that's your goal now, to apply successfully and confidently. Now, given the complexity of the application process and the odds of acceptance, you need a guide who knows the process inside and out and who can support you through this demanding journey. You need Accepted to be your guide. With Accepted, you can save time, you can apply with confidence, apply successfully, and access professional expert advice, which provides experience and objectivity. We have the admissions experts like Alicia, the guides, who can mentor you through this process so that you can achieve your goal of applying confidently and successfully. Former admissions directors, staff members, post-bac program directors who have been on the other side of the process and who can mentor you through it. Here's what I suggest you do after the webinar and after the Q&A. 1. Visit exhibit.com/medessays. Choose a service that's right for you, get the guidance you need, and apply confidently and effectively. Now, some of you are going to say, well, aren't you guys expensive? Well, I can tell you this much. We're a lot less expensive than having to reapply. And what are the risks of not using us? I already mentioned one, the cost of reapplication. And if that also includes an MCAT retake, it really is a couple $1,000. Application fees with secondary application fees, again, it adds up real fast. Additional year of reduced pre-physician earnings. Presumably you're going to earn a whole lot more after you finish medical school than you are now. There's also the potential, possibly, that you could have gotten into a better program with possibly higher lifetime earnings. And you can see there the minimum investment for our hourly work is $325. We also have a secondary package for existing clients. It's $3,925. For new clients, it's a little bit more. What about our clients? What do they say about us? You've so far heard from me and Alicia, but what do they say? Let's hear. Hi, Mrs. Demonkar. I do apologize for the lag in my response. It's evidence that I am very busy because I am a med student. I was offered 4 interviews total and was accepted to 2 schools. I chose to attend UCF College of Medicine in Orlando. I am eternally grateful to you and all the critical advice and help you gave. I could not have made it through the application process without your help. Or the next one. My experience working with Alicia was amazing. She was knowledgeable and guided me through all steps of the process. The turnaround time for editing my secondaries was very short and it allowed me to really push ahead in having my applications out earlier. Alicia's input on my essays was invaluable. Add something about her excellent and very equally valuable interview prep. Now, Alicia is wonderful, skilled, talented consultant, and I'm sure you realize after this marvelous presentation, but there's only one of her, and she does book up. I don't want you to think that we don't have other talented experts on the staff, so here is a little more feedback. I feel very lucky to be able to work with Dr. Gordon during the last application cycle, and I'm not going to read everything, but Dr. Gordon has been very responsible in editing my secondaries and prepping me for interviews. I still remember Dr. Gordon and I spent 7 or 8 drafts just on one 250-word secondary essay, which I believe played a huge role in my acceptance at that medical school. This fellow was accepted to Northwestern, Emory, University of Michigan, and UCLA. Or the one on the upper right. Dr. Newman, this is absolutely impressive. I cannot be happier today. The tone of my text sounds personal, professional, consequential, and so true. Your work is spectacular. And then the last one, Jessica really helped me with writing my personal statement. With her help, I was able to better prepare myself for my secondary applications and later interviews. Now I will be starting medical school in the fall. We'd love to help you, as we've helped the authors of these comments, the comments that you just saw, and thousands of others over the last 20 years. So, and with that, I think we are ready for the Q&A. Okay, so there are, as I mentioned, a lot of questions here. And Alicia, okay, from Divya, what are the most memorable secondary essays and what qualities or experiences do they touch on?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What were the most, obviously we don't want to disclose something that's confidential, but I guess the question is, what makes a memorable secondary essay? What qualities or...
Ooh, that's a tough question. That's really hard. It depends on the person, right? Yeah. So each person has such unique experiences, skills, talents. So my job, and what I love about my job, is helping each student to see what is unique, what are their greatest strengths, what will help them succeed in medical school, and to highlight those things in their essays. So it depends, right, from question to question, how you will approach it. But the most memorable essays, I would say, are those that are honest, those that demonstrate a deep level of reflection, and those that answer the prompt in a sophisticated way.
Thoughtful way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to ask why a few times.
Yeah. One of my favorite practices, and of course I tell students that we're doing this because otherwise you sound like a toddler, but there's a CEO, I think it's of Honda in Japan, and he calls it the 5 whys. He says that if you ask why 5 times, you'll get to the heart of any question, issue, what have you. And it really works. And sometimes you can get there faster than 5.
Right. Sometimes it only take 5.
Try it. It's fun.
You know, why do you want to be a doctor? I want to help people. Why do you want to help people in this way?
Yeah.
You know, and ask, just dig a little deeper. That tends to make and provide an example or story that illustrates your why and answers the why. That's to me what makes a memorable one. All right, let's go on. Thank you. Let's go on to the next question here. Thank you, Divya, for the excellent question. Hold on just a minute. Okay, the next question is from Gabriel. How much do you charge for your services for secondaries? Well, as I mentioned above, our minimum fee is $325. 5 hours is $15.25. You get $100 off if you use the Save Big coupon by October 8th. We also have packages that are a little bit more than $4,000 flat rate essay packages for a bunch of, I think, up to 8 secondary essays. So there are different options. If you're interested, go to this page. You can either purchase online or you'll see their options to contact us. And if you want to work with Alicia, you can request to work with Alicia also. So thank you very much for that question.
I think students are always surprised by how fast we work.
Yeah.
I think over the years I've gotten faster and faster with editing.
Right.
And I think students are often surprised by how much we can cover in an hour and how much I can edit in the same amount of time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So another question is, how soon do you recommend engaging with Accepted or Accepted's team, how soon is too soon? Is too soon? Well, you're here for secondaries, so I'm going to guess that you're either applying now, working on secondaries now. Apparently, that was 2/3 of you at the beginning of the call, or you are planning ahead for next year. That was approximately 1/3 of you. In terms of those who are working on secondaries, you're definitely not too soon. You don't have any worries about being too soon. Contact us as soon as you get off the webinar and use that coupon and save the money. If you are applying for the 2019-20 application cycle, as Alicia mentioned, you can definitely contact us now. You can have preliminary meetings with Alicia or with our other consultants now, work on your personal statement over the winter break. You can save $100 off any of our packages, whether you purchase an hourly plan or you purchase our primary plus secondary application. Again, you can use that coupon, and you can get started and have that early advantage, not only of being early, but of being early and being excellent. Early advantage without the excellence isn't an advantage at all. It's a mistake. But when you combine the two, then you have an advantage in the applicant pool. Okay, let's go on. Do you have anything to add to that? I kind of took over that one. Sorry.
No, that was fantastic.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Now, here's a really good question. And it's a great question. It's a great situation to be in. How do you answer adversity challenge questions if you do not have any hardships that seem as severe to admissions committees? First of all, be very happy about it. Be very grateful. Go ahead.
Everybody's overcome something. In my experience, everybody's had to overcome something. So I'm sure that this person has something to work with, and so you're just not sure what to use. And I would love to have a conversation with you to talk about, what all the options may be, your background, but there's always something that you could use to answer that question.
I would probably agree. I can probably imagine situations where that's not really true, unless you want to talk about the challenge of affluence, which probably will come across a little corny. But you can also talk about how you've helped others overcome challenges. That would be my other
Exactly.
suggestion.
Exactly, Linda. Yeah.
Okay.
There's always some way to answer that question that can be very effective and strategic. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, let's see. This question here for the challenge topics. This is a question. I hope you're listening now because you really wanted this question answered. For the challenge topics, is it taboo to talk about academic struggles?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Well, it
would probably depend.
If your biggest, go ahead, Linda.
Wouldn't it depend on the details?
Yeah, it depends on the details, but also if academics has been your biggest adversity, that might. I don't think that would be the best possible way to approach that type of question. So it would depend. I would need to know more about your background to answer that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if you're talking like struggling with a learning disability, that might be a good.
Yeah.
I don't want to say good topic, but an effective use of the question. So it would, again, the details would count here.
That's true.
Let's see. Here's a question. I went through a brief period of time when I could not walk. I ended up climbing the most difficult mountain in Yosemite after I recovered. Could I talk about that?
Wow.
Now, you should know that both Alicia and I are nuts about Yosemite.
I just finished a cross-stitch pattern of Yosemite, of Half Dome, actually. Yeah. So Yosemite is near and dear to both of us, but of course you should write about that.
That's nearer to me than to you, but it might be as dear to both.
That's amazing. I think, yeah, definitely write that essay. I want to read that essay.
Yeah, that should be a great essay.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question from Michael. What is a letter of intent supposed to address? I haven't heard of this before. Great question.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we have I believe I've written 2 different blogs about letters of intent on the accepted.com blog. And if you guys don't follow the accepted.com blog, you are missing out because there are some fantastic articles available. Right, we cover all different aspects of the application process, and then Linda conducts interviews with medical students or students recently accepted, and also admissions directors. There's lots of really helpful advice, and actually that's another source of material that you can actually use to write secondaries about some of the schools. But I would say, yeah, you should definitely check out our blog because I've described, what is a letter of intent. I've broken it down to its like 4 essential parts with advice about how to write it. But yeah, check out our blog.
Okay. Let's see. And does it make a significant difference if you submit 4 to 6 weeks after you receive a secondary?
So here's the thing. If you can imagine, there's an administrator sitting somewhere in their office, desperately scrambling to fill an interview schedule. And they're just like praying and hoping that they're going to be able to fill it in time for the interview date. And right, they're stressed out and worried about it. So every time you submit a secondary within 2 weeks or even less, within 1 week, right? My first student already got his, an acceptance this cycle, and he was turning them in within 1 to 2 weeks. So just imagine like you are making like the day of an administrator because, oh my goodness, the student has made us their priority. They are so excited about our school, they returned it as quickly as possible. It's right, beautifully written. It's, definitely somebody who we want to interview, and they get so excited because they get to fill their schedule. So if 4 to 6 weeks, it's really pushing it because you're telling them that they're not your priority and then you don't become their priority. So you don't want to really go beyond 2 weeks whenever possible. But 4 to 6 weeks, yeah, you're kind of pushing it.
But again, the only way, if you get in it, if you're talking about yourself now, get in as soon as possible. Whatever damage has been done is done. If you want to do more damage, wait longer. So cut your losses, get it in. Okay?
Yeah. I would just get it in as soon as possible.
Right. Okay, so one of my secondaries, this is going to be the last question. One of my secondaries requires a video interview. How should I approach this?
Oh, those are fun. Yeah, I've been reviewing those for students. So it's always helpful to have somebody else give you feedback because it's hard to, right? Many people are too hard on themselves, or some people need help in the other direction, right? They may come across as too quirky, or spend the entire time talking about playing the ukulele, which, right, is going to miss the mark. And I did have a student do that actually once.
Really?
So you really, I would say, get some feedback, get some coaching, right? I love helping students with mock interviews, with recording videos, with, what to talk about, what to say, how to present yourself. And I give students feedback on multiple levels. You get feedback on the rhetoric of your responses, on your body language, on your facial expressions, right? You will learn so much about yourself. It's my favorite part of the process.
Okay. I want to thank you very much, applicants, for your time, your answers, your questions, your participation. I want to thank you, Alicia, for an absolutely wonderful webinar. And I'd like to share 2 thoughts and a story before we part. First, remember the advice Alicia has given you about authenticity, timeliness, balance, showing fit with the schools, and so much more. So if you're worried about churning out those secondary essays quickly while showing the fit necessary to snag interview invitations, not to mention prepping for the interviews themselves, and if you're anxious about spending the next year running this marathon or the remaining of this year, if you're applying now, it will be next year if you're applying in 2019-20. Again, keep in mind the excellent advice that Alicia has given you today and your goal. Apply successfully and confidently. Here's feedback from a client who worked with Accepted. Well, actually, that's not the feedback, but I'll get there in a second. There we go. I've been thinking about this whole crazy process after being accepted to 3 medical schools, and I know that I wouldn't have had a prayer if it weren't for your substantial help. They say the essays are one of the most important aspects of the application, especially for someone like me whose numbers are a little below average. So I can't express my appreciation to you enough. You have helped me immeasurably. You greatly distressed an important part of the process that was making me quite anxious. I felt much more confident in my essays after working with you. Slightly low numbers, concerned about the quality and quantity of writing you'll have to do. Can you relate? He dealt successfully with his concerns by working with Accepted. He applied confidently and successfully. He is now a med student. You can be too.